right. So I guess it's always kind of hard to be the one speaking before lunch because I think many of you may be already starving. So I'm gonna try to do this like in a very interesting way because we're gonna talk today about strategy, right? So we're gonna take some learnings from the discussions that we have earlier today and then bring new concepts that I guess for you are also might be helpful so we can have during the lunch or afterwards some discussions that you may have or questions. So let's get talking about this. And I have a question for you guys, but first I want to give you a quick introduction of what we're gonna see today within the next 19 minutes. It's a 7-step strategy framework that I have been building over the past, let's say, 5 to 6 years, working in tech companies, doing consulting projects for tech companies. Before working for this new project that I'm working right now in Latin America, building a super app in Mexico and Central America, I was working at Uber, so I was responsible for doing this kind of stuff, like the Uber Pass, the Uber One, and many other kind of like loyalty programs to keep customers engaged. So what we're gonna see today is this framework. The first thing is talking about external validation or an external assessment, doing an internal research or something that is very related with what Jenny was mentioning a few minutes ago. Then how do you do this conceptual packaging? And this framework applies not only for existing subscriptions that you may have in your companies, but also if you want to launch a new one, or if you definitely want to start a new concept or a new company. Then we're gonna talk about monetization goals. Then step number 5 about pricing structure and simulation from that. And then the most interesting one, the most time-consuming one, which is about experimentation and rolling out. And then for me, the most important one afterwards is to always have feedback loops. If you don't have feedback loops, you cannot improve this, and then you cannot make this a sustainable, profitable monetization strategy over time. So if we go, I have a quick question for you guys. If we mind go to Slido, I would like to just get a sense of what challenges are you guys having in your companies. So if you may go to scanning the QR code or going Slido with this number here, I would like you guys to help me answer this quick question, just to have a broad sense of where we're standing or what's the audience having here. So the question is like, what will best describe the most important challenge your company is facing these days? And then obviously, if you are still super hungry, and then it's an honest answer. So that will give you obviously a sense that how fast I can go with the presentation. But yeah, so no one has answered yet, so it's fine. So let's give 10 more seconds just to have a quick idea. Good. It's increasing there. All right. Five more seconds. Oh. Okay. So it's very interesting. I think also because of the audience, right? Like developing new products or add-ons to diversify revenue streams. It's very interesting. In other audiences that I have had over the past months, like there's lots of pressure from competitors, like launching new products and doing like insane price wars in different countries. But yeah, understanding customers, doing research, and obviously I think perhaps this one that will come up as one of important reasons, which is like increasing costs due to inflationary risk that we are facing right now. So if we get back to the presentation, so let's get this started with the first step, which is about external validation. If we go into into the next slide, we're gonna see basically what I'm talking about. And this is an assessment that I see that lots of companies don't actually do on a normal basis, which is understanding not only how my product is standing or whether my customers like my product or not, or they are actually using my product or not, but how is this compared with the competition. So you're gonna see lots of frameworks here. The idea is not just to have these frameworks to use it in your companies or to kind of like get some consulting services afterwards. It's just to have a broad sense of like, it's always important to have this external assessment just to make sure like what are these key success factors or these, let's say, product attributes or product features, and how does they perform with other competitors, right? We are not alone. We're always going to have other competitors, other players around. So it's important to have these two analyses. What are customers liking? This is the decision profile. And then putting all that together into the third box over there, which is competitive advantage matrix, in which you analyze which attributes are actually important for the customers and which are not. And this is an assessment that I normally don't see lots of companies doing this at least once a year, but it's recommended to like constantly be doing this just to monitor which product features on the perception side from customers are actually adding value or not. You may get some of these insights from the data, obviously, but at the end of the day, what you're going to do is just to come up with this last graph about like the value map, which is understanding if the price that you're charging customers, the price that they are paying, how is this compared with the value that you are delivering, right? And then obviously putting all that together with other competitors, that might give you an interesting idea of like whether it's the right time to reassess your product strategy in the eyes of the customers, if they are actually using other apps, or if they are actually being part of other kind of subscription products. And then the internal analysis, this is very important and very basic. You may start with like a subscription app that only has one plan, but at the end, if you analyze this from a very economical perspective, you may not be capturing lots of money when you analyze and where you're having only one price model. Even if you have this price model on like, let's say, with some annual discounts or some use case e-discounts, in the end, what we want to do is this internal analysis in which we came up with this kind of like matrix in which we have the pricing, we have different bundles of different plans according to the level of usage or access to product features, right? So this transition from like the silver bullet pricing model to a differentiated packaging model is always recommended, even if you're on an early stage in a company. And then in this internal validation, this is step number 2, it's always important that even when you have an existing plan or you have a conceptual plan, you need to, in the eyes of the customers, identify within your customers, this is why it's an internal validation, what product features, what key success factors they value and how they value them. Because the data might tell you a little bit about this, but again, perception is always king in this kind of regards. So you may also find some specific attributes or some specific groups of customers that might be looking more for performance, other ones maybe more looking for quality, other ones that are 100% price seekers. So it's always important to identify in terms of perception, how are your customers seeing this? And after that, we can go to step number 3, in which you start like doing the very first conceptual packaging strategies. And what we're seeing here is just basically a way in which you can have in your company, if you're designing or you're part of the product teams or the marketing teams or even the strategic planning teams, is analyzing how flexible your package or your plan will be against how simple will it be. Because you may also find lots of times that you're gonna find like very simple packages, but at the end of the day, it's not very simple in the eyes in the eyes of customers. And then here you may see some examples, right? The ones that I find particularly very flexible but least simple to understand in the eyes of the customers are those that are normally related with the insurance services or healthcare services, when you can actually change the kind of factors that are important for you in order to have like a la carte or like a very tailored package. But you may see that it depends, right? You may have like these kind of models on these, let's say the third quadrant, if we see it this way, more into like the business to business world. But when you go onto the more simpler way and then the least flexible, because you're only giving one option or two options or three options or four options to customers, you may find most of the let's say branded companies, right? We have Netflix, we have Amazon Prime, even LinkedIn. But the idea is just to have a quick understanding of how you measure flexibility with simplicity when you are assessing the first conceptual packages that you're gonna go and test in the market, right? After you do that, it's always important, and this is a step that like to always have in mind when we're designing new changes to our product strategy, which is like what are our pricing, our monetization strategy, and our business strategy goals short term to long term, right? Why is this important? Because it it is understandable that when we launch a membership or when we launch a subscription program, we only going to focus on a few features, on a few benefits for customers. And then as we grow our company, as we got into different business units, as we diversify into other kind of ventures, we might go into a membership or like a subscription that also has other, let's say, goals, which might be upselling, which is getting into other benefits maybe that you created in your company or other ones that you have doing some alliances with other companies. And then at the end of the day, or long term, could be other kind of diversification strategies in terms of upselling or cross-selling. But what I'm saying here basically is being very practical in your strategy. If you are right now starting a business or you are in a phase in which you can only have one single offering, try to focus on volume or use case segmentation in the short term. And then eventually, as you expand to different kind of product categories, you can start also tying up to the subscription plan other specific benefits from other business units or from third-party benefits that you may have in an upsell or cross-sell approach, right? At the end of the day, this is basically also the kind of strategy that we pursued when we were working at Uber. So you may imagine at the beginning there were like different concepts of like ride-sharing only membership or like food delivery only membership. But at the end of the day, the long-term gamble that we have or the big ball bet that we have back in the days is just to have a platform play, right? How do you compete with Lyft? How do you compete with DoorDash? Having one single bundle that actually gives you access to all their benefits, whether you might like them or not, or whether you can use them or not, but at the end of the day, you're going to have them there. And this is an interesting move, let's say, game plan that most of these other companies are having with other companies, even when they are not there. And then we go into the step 5, which is basically making sure which pricing model you have here. So again, another important, let's say, outlook into different dimensions, whether you have a pricing model that is a fixed model or a variable model. This is like super important because if you don't have the right model here for pricing, it can make your pricing strategy like just fail during the next few months, right? It's very important. It depends a lot in the industry. It depends a lot in the stage of the business. It depends a lot on the value proposition. But the more flexible that you get there, obviously, which is what I normally recommend, the more value that you capture. This is very tied with the slide that I showed before. So it's important just to make sure how you're going to tackle this. Obviously, when it's like business to consumer industry, it's a different kind of model, but it all relies in these kind of different structures. So it's important to take a close look and then go into the next step, which is once you have picked your right pricing model, then my best recommendation is to do lots of simulations. And this is more on the financial side. Do lots of simulations. The tool that I recommend the most is doing Monte Carlo simulation, in which you basically using Excel spreadsheets or like, something, you run lots of simulations of what can go wrong with different pricing scenarios. And this is before going to test in the market, before doing any kind of like A/B testing or any kind of like research. You just go and plug lots of numbers, because what I have seen is like you normally, this happens a lot when you have companies that are not new, that they have, like in the market for 5-10 years, and they want to launch their first subscription or membership, and they don't do this kind of simulations, and then they figured out that they use historical data, and then it didn't work out well, because they didn't do lots of simulations, and then they end up like spending lots of money, and then the subscription was not even like break even, right? Particularly if you have like a business that has more like a variable cost than fixed cost. So then you do all the simulations, and then you go to the experimentation part, and then this is obviously the step number 6. And here you may see lots of methods. Obviously, the most practical one, or the cheapest one, if you want to say it that way, it's on the experimentation front, is the A/B testing. Financially, it helps a lot because it doesn't have lots of requirements in that regard. But when it comes to doing the best methods, I always recommend doing synthetic controls or switchbacks. Those are very good methods. It depends, again, how you want to measure this. Simulation, as I mentioned, with the Monte Carlo simulation, and then this is very tied with 2 presentations ago about like data plus market insights. It's super important to do lots of surveys, lots of research analysis. The ones that I recommend the most for doing pricing analysis in the market is asking customers are conjoint studies. These are very good marketing approaches for new products. And then obviously we can use another ones that are more specific with more, also with some statistical significance and validation, which are Van Westendorp and Gabor-Grange. Again, if you need, you can go and check more literature about that, but I definitely recommend obviously doing lots of experimentation, but also doing lots of market insights. And at the end of the day, it's always recommended to, if you have in-house expertise from those people that have been on sales for 10 years in the company or 5 years in the company, always get a point of view from them, because it's always recommended to mix all of that. And then you go on the market, you go experiment, you find out that something was very valuable for you, and then you start piloting this. And the last step that I may have here for you guys is obviously about having feedback loops. This is again something in this 7-step process that I'm talking about, you guys, the one that we normally forget the most. We go and launch the membership program or the subscription program, and then 5 years later, 2 years later, 1 year later, we start figuring out that we didn't go and analyze in the market competition. We didn't go and analyze in the market how consumer behavior was changing. We didn't go in the market and ask customers why they were canceling their subscriptions. And because of this, we don't have a way to, let's say, calibrate or to adjust our strategy over time. There are many ways to do this, and there's no coincidence why, for instance, on the streaming industry, we have so many players right now. Even on the payments industry, even like many other industries, we have lots of other competitors. But the most important part here is just to make sure that we are having these feedback loops in the way that I'm just mentioning there, right? Are we increasing our costs? How is this affecting our business model? Are we losing money from our subscription because we have added lots of benefits that some customers don't even care about? Maybe we can figure out that which is something very important for me, which is identifying some hidden or unexpressed needs from customers, something that they would like to get on the subscription plan, and listening to the customers. So those are the 7-step, let's say, approaches that I want to tell you guys. And then there's a bonus recommendation that I had here for you. And obviously, it's not just to making sure that you launch the product and then that's it. We obviously need to come around with different promotional tactics. This is a huge other topic, so I just wanted to summarize with a few tactics that I have found out in the market or I have implemented in the past. The most common ones for you guys with annual payment discounts or even giving some freebies or reducing the size of the benefits so that you keep customers engaged. This, again, a whole new topic that we can talk about in the future, but in the end of the day, it's being very creative, finding the ways for customers not to churn, and if they churn, finding a way to have these win-backs with the right strategies, and particularly these 8 strategies that I'm showing here are the most effective ones that I have found out for different kind of industries. And this is perhaps my last slide. This comes from an interesting discussion that we had with the head of product from Netflix, I think 2 years ago. If you need to have also another way of seeing subscriptions, this is something that I got in my mind so many times, is membership were more about emotions and subscription more about utilities. Even when the same word might mean the same, in the eyes of the customers, when we did lots of research about customers, the head of product from Netflix was telling us membership is when you belong to something, when you want to have an attachment towards a service of a product. And it changes a lot, because what you actually want to do with your strategy is also to sort of create emotions. Even when you're in the business-to-business world, you want to create something that is meaningful for your customer in a way that it's related in how they increase their productivity or how they increase their customer engagement or how they monetize the different strategy. So it's an interesting talk. Maybe there might be a TED talk or something from High, but it was an interesting lesson that I wanted to share with you guys, being at the intersection and not seeing just subscription as utilities, because believe me, utilities is something that you can actually change from one day to another. Even when you have this as a recurrent revenue stream, if you don't create emotions with your customers and you don't tie this with the 7-step approach that I mentioned before for having a promotional strategy, it's going to be kind of difficult to have a customer lifetime value and retention over time, but I think this is an important have to have. I'm happy to have any kind of like questions from you guys during the lunch break, but if you want to keep in touch, there's my details here, and then thank you again for the opportunity.